Hi, and welcome to the fourth edition of Women in Consulting's Industry Insights. This series invites inspiring female leaders onto our podcast to share their experience and advice to you, our budding consultants. Here with us today is Emma Jin, a technology consulting manager currently working at Accenture. Emma, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to hopefully share a few insights about my experiences in consulting and, hopefully inspire some others.
It's definitely our pleasure. And I know as a consulting manager, you're very busy. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, great. So I think you've already mentioned, so I'm a technology consulting manager within Accenture in our strategy and consulting practice. I also sit in our tech advisory area as well. And I've been with Accenture for about 5 years now. So I started as a grad, kind of made my way up to manager. And yeah, it's been a really great experience so far.
That's awesome to hear about your experience so far. Being a technology consultant manager, would you be able to tell us a bit about your background and your journey to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think maybe a couple of you guys have heard from me before when I did a few things for women in consulting, but my background's actually not in commerce or anything like that. I have a bit of an unconventional background. So I did my undergraduate in New Zealand. So I'm from New Zealand originally. I studied at the University of Canberra and I did a Bachelor of Science with first class honours in chemistry. And then I actually started a PhD program at the ANU, and it was a pretty hard time. I actually decided to change that into a master's degree. And then I decided to go into consulting because I just realized that being in the lab and consulting wasn't really for me. I didn't really, fundamental research is so important in society, and we can see the advances that have happened and led us to the COVID vaccine being produced so fast. However, it just was a very isolating career for myself. I couldn't see myself doing that long term. And I kind of realized that I wanted to try something different. So that sort of led me down the path of consulting and, applying for Accenture. And, I've been there since, for the last 5 years.
Wow, that's so reassuring to hear. When you hear from successful females in the field like yourself, that it's not always a linear path to working in a job that you really enjoy.
It's definitely not a linear path.
Would you be able to tell us a bit about technology consulting and why you chose to pursue it?
Yeah, no, great question. So I kind of, if I take a step back in terms of just consulting generally, I chose to do consulting because I was looking for something that would kind of be able to, I would be able to use my degree in. And that kind of level of problem solving was really something that kind of attracted me about consulting. Every day is about solving new problems for your clients. And in terms of the technology element, well, I feel like, we're in an age where technology is so important around us, and all the clients that Accenture work for are all looking at these digital transformations, particularly in the times of COVID. So that's sort of what has attracted me to Accenture. I kind of, I applied and they took me because Accenture look at everybody with all different backgrounds, because we really, really do acknowledge that diversity of thinking and, STEM backgrounds are so important to create these great environments in our organization. So, all those elements kind of led me down the path of choosing Accenture and technology consulting.
That sounds like technology consulting sounds really fascinating, and it is really a growing field. And I'm sure there are so many exciting projects you've worked on during your time at Accenture. Could you tell us a bit about some of your favorite projects you've worked on so far?
Oh yeah. So it's very interesting. And another great question. So I've worked on quite a lot of different clients. So that's the beauty about working in consulting, right? You get to see a lot of breadth of clients, a lot of different types of projects. You never kind of stay in one place for too long. And that's the thing that I love the most about it. And being a little bit neurodiverse myself, I like that constant flux of change. And that makes me get out of bed in the morning. The other thing that's really great about that change as well is that when times are tough, you know that it's not going to last forever, because that project does have an end date. So, you want to do the best job that you can, represent Accenture and do the best that you can for your clients. But you always know that the hard times end. And that's kind of true in life. Your positives and your negatives are never going to last forever, to enjoy the ride. In terms of some of my favorite projects, though, so I predominantly work on business and digital transformation. So what that really means is that our clients are often going on changes, and often that's implementing new solutions, kind of, with to catch up to the current trends of technology, to improve the ways of working, all, at the end of the day, our clients serve customers as well, right? So, we might be working on a bank or in a telco, or something like that, an energy provider. All of those have clients and customers themselves. So ultimately, at the end of the day, they're trying to improve that experience for their customers. So we're here to help them do that themselves. So I work on those kind of really big transformation pieces where we might be implementing a new solution for them, for example. So my skill set is in something what we call delivery management, which is really trying to make sure that we optimize that experience and that delivery life cycle for our clients. So that means that we're delivering on time, on budget, and with the best experience that we can have all around. And so one of my favorites was on a large infrastructure client that we worked on, and we worked on a workforce transformation piece for them. So what that meant is, they had field technicians going out, helping, working at the end user as well. So for their customers, and the workforce transformation was implementing a system or a solution for them to help, optimize that experience. So the route that the field technician might need to go on to make sure that you hit all the right customers in a row, for example. And, so we're just helping optimize that experience for the end user. So that was probably one of my highlights of my career for many reasons. There was a lot of ups and downs in that project. And so I learned so much of that project. But I think most importantly, I worked with some of the best people, and those big transformations, you've got to work with really, really great people to get you through some of the tough times. So yeah, I really, I think that was probably one of the highlights of my career so far.
Wow, that project sounds very exciting. And I'm wondering so you mentioned you studied chemistry, and I'm wondering, how did you find your chemistry background influences your work as a technology consultant?
Yeah, I keep saying that's a really great question, but they're all really great questions. So it's really, really fascinating. So I think obviously what drove me to consulting was the desire to want to change, because I wasn't really happy where I was today. And I think that's a really great lesson to learn for aspiring consultants or just people that are looking and searching for their journey in life, is that you do have an opportunity to change your mind and do things differently if you're not happy. And I wasn't happy doing chemistry, and so I knew that I needed to change. I said before as well, that whole journey, the whole problem solving element of consulting was really attractive to me. So I think that first led me there. And then every day, what I realize now is that I may not have a commerce background, that you could perceive that as being limiting in some way. However, I believe that my ability to learn, my ability to be logical in the process of trying to solve a problem is something that I've learned in in chemistry. And so kind of, when I think about my chemistry experience, it was I was working on natural product synthesis. So I was looking at a molecule and how do you make that molecule. So if you think about how that relates to consulting, at the end of the day, we're trying to transform a business. We still are looking for an outcome, and we still need to think about the logical process to get to that outcome, much like chemistry. In order to make this molecule, I had to think about the steps to make the molecule. Very, very similar in consulting. We're trying to get an outcome for our client. We're either trying to optimize something, we're trying to build something, we're trying to change something. So how are we going to do that? So we have to think about all the different things that are going to impact that change. So, I think that logical thinking, that problem solving, I think those are really critical skills that have helped me in my career so far that I've brought over from chemistry.
That's very reassuring, I think, to students who find they might have picked the wrong degree or the wrong major. And talking about the process of problem solving, what does a typical day at work look like?
Oh, I don't think I have any 2 days that are the same, to be perfectly honest. That is, some people might find that really scary. Again, I find it quite exciting because I come to work every day and it's a little bit different. But there are elements that are very similar. So the elements that are quite similar are, we have client engagements. We are client facing, so we will have client discussions, meetings with them to try to progress our work that we need to do for them. So those could be stand-ups. And for those of you who don't know stand-ups, they're kind of like brief checkpoints in the day. They might be that, or we might actually have to work through stuff together. So, we have a lot of those client meetings through the day to try to progress things. And then obviously during the day, I have to actually do the work as well. So often that's either, you're making PowerPoint slides, you're doing data analysis, you're doing something around the lines of, the information that you've got, what are you going to output that as? So we do a lot of that during the day as well. But then some of my favorite parts of my day as a manager as well is that I love connecting with people. So through my day, I might, have conversations with some junior people or some senior people to get advice myself or to provide guidance to people. I'm really heavily involved in our communities and inclusion and diversity community and our broader tech advisory community, and even brought out our strategy and consulting. So, what can I do to support the community? And then, there's also things like, what can I do to grow my career and what can I do to help the business? So we might be working on proposals and so I think you can, based on that, just that little spiel that I said, there's so much that goes on in my day. No 2 days are the same, but it's all about how do we do the best for our clients and how do we do the best for Accenture.
That's amazing to hear, like that you have so many things that you can do during your day at Accenture. Obviously, there are perks and drawbacks to having project-based work. And sometimes you have to put in extra hours to get things done. What have you found are the best and worst aspects of a job in technology consulting?
Yeah, those long hours can be tough. Like you said, they are really tough. I think, but on the positive side is that you are somewhat in control of your own schedule and career to a degree. By that, I mean, we may have client engagements. Those definitely are non-negotiable, but through your day, you kind of have a bit of flexibility in terms of, you might need to nip out and do something and come back. So, your hours are what you put in. So as long as the work sort of gets done, no one's really going to get overly upset with you, which I think is really great, right? So that's sort of a positive in a way, because you're the person that sets your own boundaries. But obviously the drawback of that is sometimes you do have to do the long hours to make sure the work gets done. So I think it's all about riding the peaks and the troughs. Some days are going to be really, really busy. Some days are going to be not so busy. And you just have to kind of balance it out so that, and a career is like 40 years long or something like that. Probably that more than that. We're talking a long time. Our careers are very long. So we just have to kind of make sure that on the long scheme of things, that all kind of balances out. But, I think my favorite part about working in consulting and Accenture is the people. The people are absolutely phenomenal. And, I've met some of my best friends at Accenture. I have some of the best mentors, and I'm really, really fortunate to do that. And it kind of makes those long hours and the hard work worth it, because you just get to experience so much joy with your colleagues, and they're some of the best people you'll ever meet.
That's so lovely to hear. And I'm sure a lot of the students listening will be wanting to also work at Accenture with such a lovely team to work with. So now if we talk about some key qualities that you believe a technology consultant should possess, are there perhaps some certain skills that you found yourself to be important throughout your career and that you're continuing to build upon?
Yeah, so there's a couple of, I don't really love to talk about soft and hard skills, because I really have a bit of an aversion to people saying that's soft skills. So I think one of the big thing that I think is super important is that curiosity and the willingness to learn and give everything a go. There are often times that I know myself that I may not enjoy something, or people have told me they don't want to do something, but you don't often know till you try. And so I think it's important to always give things a go and always be curious about learning. I think that's what served me, in my career so far, is that I've always just sort of said yes to those opportunities that have come my way. So always be curious to learn, always say yes, always kind of lean into that opportunity. And kind of on the same line as that, and I think as a woman, it can be quite hard to back yourself and don't be afraid to fail. Like, so those are pretty part. I guess they're not really skills per se, but having that self-confidence and belief that you can do something is super, super, super important. So I also think that authenticity and empathy are really, really key and critical in a consulting career. And the reason I believe that is because you have to work with people every day, and people don't often work the same as you. And you know what? I myself struggle with this concept a lot. Sometimes I don't work the best with people that don't work like me, but I always have to take that step back and think, what are the values that they bring? What are the skills that they bring? How are they really valuable? How are they really going to help the project and help me, right? And so sometimes I have to take that step back. So those are kind of some soft skills that I think are really important. I mean, I really hate that term, like I said before, because for me, consulting is all about people and relationships. And so your strongest skills need to be your ability to connect with people. In terms of hard skills, it really just depends on the types of work you want to do. So there's lots of different things in industries and career paths you can go down. You might want to be a cloud expert. You might want to be an enterprise architect. You might want to be a process specialist. You might want to be a change specialist. And so those have specific career paths in terms of how and skill sets that you might want to learn down the track. The best part, and now this sounds like a bit of a plug for Accenture, but the best part about being a graduate is you don't necessarily need to know those skills straight away. But because we're going to teach you everything that you need to know. So, you know, those really soft skills, that curiosity to learn, that authenticity, that never saying, always leaning into the opportunity, that empathy, those are the skills that I'd want for people in my team, and the things that have, made me successful so far.
That was some really good advice. Thank you, Emma. And talking about authenticity, you're a passionate advocate about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Can you tell us a bit more about this and how this applies in the field of consulting?
Yeah, I love talking about inclusion and diversity. It's probably one of my favorite things to talk about, and the work that we do at Accenture is, I think, quite leading in the consulting field. I think we do some really, really great work. So I've seen a big change in the last 5 years or so that I've been with Accenture, both in our industry as well as just Accenture in itself. I've seen a lot of growth in society, just really based on what's happening through COVID and how that's really exacerbated the social issues that are happening in our communities today. And I think that it's a really opportune time for organizations to really lean in and look at their own inclusion and diversity agendas and how they can progress that. So we've certainly done that in Accenture. We have really been growing our inclusion diversity agenda. We have advocates and targets across all different areas, and those span between, we've got gender and gender targets. We have a 50-50 target by 2025. We have Pride and a really strong Pride ally network. We have a lot of work that we've done in enablement, which is around mental well-being and our veterans and people with disability. We've got a pretty strong cross-culture and Indigenous network. We're just launching, social mobility as well. There's a lot of great work that we've been doing, which is all about trying to make sure that Accenture is a great place for people to work. And I'm really, really proud of the work that we're doing in that space.
That sounds like really amazing, and it's great to hear all of the initiatives that Accenture has put in place. Talking about support in the workplace, what do you believe is the most important thing that companies can do to support people at the start of their career? Thinking about the students that are listening to this podcast at the moment, what traits do you look for when finding the right company?
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. So I think having a good mentor is a really, really good starting point when you're joining consulting and any organizations, especially as a woman. I think it's really important, in line with that inclusion and diversity that I was just talking about there, you need someone that's actually going to back you and be a voice for you and be an advocate for you, right? So having that mentor to open those doors for you, I think, is really crucial. Yeah, so I think mentorship is incredibly important. And so I think you can get a bit of a feel from that from your interview process. I know that the interview process for Accenture can be quite vigorous, but I think you can actually get a flavor from the people that are interviewing you, the people that are going to be in your assessment center if you're going to have one, your HR people, the responses that you get back, the frequency and of their response. I think all those really good signs as to how they're going to treat you as an individual individual in the organization, because it shows the care that they have for you through that process. But I will say that I feel like companies and organizations, you need to give it a bit of time. You need to give it at least a year or two to really fully appreciate and understand the environment, the new ways of working. You've just come from uni, you just need some time to find your feet. So, this is not unique to Accenture, but I think mostly in all organizations you'll join, it's going to be hard at the start, but you just hope that it will get better. You hope that you have the right support. You hope that you have the right mentorship to kind of help you through that initial phases.
Definitely, that's some really good piece of advice that I think all the students would benefit from. And talking about advice, what key piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think I would tell myself not to worry so much. I think, growing up, and maybe some of you all will kind of relate to this. Maybe you, Eileen, will relate to this too. I'm an immigrant's daughter. I grew up not very wealthy. And so it was really hard growing up, and which meant that my family and myself had quite a fair bit of anxiety. And so I feel like I brought that a lot into my adult life as well. Always really overcautious about things, always worried I was going to do the wrong thing. And it was always drummed into me, right, that I had to do better. I had to get the best marks. I had to be the best in my class because that was the culture I was brought up in. So I was always anxious and worried that I wasn't doing enough, or I was failing, or all of those types of things. And you know what? The most that I've learned has been through the hardest times. And it's been through those times where I've quote unquote failed. You could argue that me not finishing a PhD program is failure, but then you fast forward 5 years and I'm a consulting manager at one of our top consulting firms. So you may reflect on that moment as failure in my life, but 5 years down the track, you could also argue that I'm very successful. So, I was so conditioned to be so fearful about the future and always want to do the right thing and always worrying that I was out of line or that I was running out of time. But really, I just wish I could tell myself not to worry and to relax, because honestly, it's all going to sort itself out. It really is. What's meant to be yours will be yours. And I fully believe that. And you just have to every day work towards those little actions, those, micro actions that are going to get you to being the person that you want to be. And that's not necessarily in your work, but the person that you want to be in your life. So, I think that's probably what I would tell my younger self. Just chill out.
I think that's really reassuring to students listening today. And I think managing anxiety and imposter syndrome is something that faces a lot of students wanting to enter the consulting industry. Would you be able to talk a little bit about your experiences, possibly with imposter syndrome, and how you dealt with it?
Yeah. Oh, I face this like all the time, if not every day, because I actually was I was actually not long ago speaking on a panel with some incredibly senior women. I was asked that exact same question, and I was like, behind me have 2 decades of experience, 3 decades of experience, some of them. Who am I to sit next to these incredible women trying to give advice from my perspective? Like, wow, that is a big ask. And then, obviously, like you said, as you're joining the consulting industry, people have so much more experience than you. And then you're like sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, how can I compare? How can I do? So a couple of things. Comparison is a thief of joy. So just because you might not know something does not mean that you don't have anything to add based on your own experience, right? And also I find that sometimes you'll realize that you're in a room and you might think that question is stupid, but I bet you 90% of that room also don't understand the question, right? You want to ask that question rather that you want to ask. So it's not a stupid question. And they don't understand in that room either. I think you'll find more than often that you're not the only person in the room that is feeling those feelings of being an imposter, because everyone's just trying to figure it out themselves. Some people just have a bit more experience. And so I think it's trying to, be brave, trying to figure out those mechanisms that are going to help you get over that fear of failure, that imposter syndrome feeling. And for me, my main anchor through all my career is that I'm very outcome focused and very people focused. So I want to know how we're going to do the right thing and how we're going to do the right thing for our people. And that people might be our clients or Accenture people. So that for me is so strong that any fear or any imposter syndrome that I might feel often goes away, because that is a really big driver for me. So, I think that's probably some of my tips that I have. I know that sounds really silly, but more than I will guarantee that the biggest thing, if you're going to take anything away from this little segment about imposter syndrome, is that most people don't know what they're doing either. And I think that's a bit of a secret, but they don't.
Wow, like that's such an inspirational attitude to have in the world, and I'm really glad that you're here to tell us, to relax a little bit, and I think just take it as it goes. Last question, if you could give only one piece of advice to students starting a career in consulting, what would you say to them?
Well, big question. One piece of advice to give to students starting a career in consulting. Just one? Okay. I think it's just be fearless. Ask questions. Be fearless and ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you're never gonna be successful, because you're not gonna understand what's going on. So always that curiosity. Be fearless. Ask the question. Just jump in. It's gonna be hard. It's always hard. Every new adventure you go in is gonna be hard. And I just find that every year I'm with Accenture, or every year I'm in consulting, I learn more, and those experiences shape kind of who I am and my approach next time. But if I don't ask the questions, I'm never going to know the answers. So, go ask the questions, be fearless.
Thank you so much, Emma. And thank you so much for sharing your story and insights tonight. It's been lovely having you here on our podcast, Industry Insights. So thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you at our next episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Sorry, that was Siri. Wow. Maybe we should start that again. And I'll
that's so funny.